run the video.
So welcome everybody. I'm just going to find my own screen here and share it with you and then we can kick off. I hope everybody can see that. Jess, can you confirm that's all solid and shared? Okay, well, hopefully.
Yes.
So we're going to share with you today a very brief extract from a masterclass I'm doing for the AutosBuzz conference in e-commerce. We've got about 20 minutes today to talk about it. We've got about 3.5 hours in Barcelona next week to do the same thing in a much longer way. So if you're interested, still time to sign up. But anyway, here we go. So, oh dear. So first of all, just to kick off, Deloitte have just produced a recent set of their research that they do pretty much every year on online and other car buying, EVs as well. Very interesting, worth having a look. Just one slide out of this to kick off, which is the kind of level of interest across Europe amongst different country populations for different types of car purchasing. Note that it's most preferred way to buy a vehicle, which means that it's pushing the preferences strongly towards in person. But the thing I would draw out most is that we have two different types of consumer here. We have those who are interested in a fully virtual experience, a relatively small percentage, and those who are interested in a partially virtual experience, a much greater percentage overall. So a really helpful result for marketplaces in general. And one of the things that we're strong believers on is that this is going to be very much a hybrid development, the development of e-commerce more broadly across both marketplaces and digital dealers. So moving on to, this is an older bit of data. This is Autotrader. It's from about 2 years ago. It was just, it was still at the height of the pandemic, March 21. And this looks at different elements of the of interest in the purchase journey. And I think what's really interesting here, note that the numbers are much higher, but the question asked is, would you consider buying? But what's so interesting is how much the pain points of part exchange and finance are areas that consumers really want to address, really happy to address online, and that delivery is actually a secondary factor within all of this. So again, very helpful for marketplaces, a much stronger consumer interest in doing the parts of the e-commerce journey, not necessarily having to do the whole e-commerce journey. So what do we mean by fully online? Well, when the AIM Group talks about fully online, we really like the CarMax definition of it. So we see it as reserving the vehicle, financing the vehicle if needed, trading in or opting out of a trade-in, and creating a remote sales order. This is a really nice definition. And the thing to notice that is missing from it, and we think missing for the right reason, is delivery. So we see a fully online sale as not something that has to be delivered. I mean, as at, say, Cazoo at the moment, it could either be a delivered or a collected car. But actually, the important functions are the functions of buying the car. Where you go to collect it, how you get it, is a secondary factor, in our opinion, in what car buying is about online. So for those of you who wonder how well the kind of best dealers are doing, CarMax in Q4 of its financial year 2022, its last reported quarter, 11% of its sales were online retail sales by this definition. So that's a run rate of about 80,000 sales a year. It's about 20% of what Carvana's doing, and it is now neck and neck with Vroom for the second position in online sales in the United States. So, and you know, we think CarMax will be the most interesting challenger to Carvana. You know, it started well, it started 7 years behind Carvana and is now kind of catching up pretty quickly in terms of what it's doing. So where are online sales at the moment? So have a little look at penetration. If we look at the States, Carvana's overall penetration is about 1% of used car sales in the States. If we look at its first market, Atlanta, Georgia, it's now about 3.5%. And if we took, what's happening probably in dealers, probably in competitors, and we had to guess because we haven't seen any good numbers on it, we would say that probably fully online car sales in the States is probably now around the 5% level. If we kind of turn to Europe, we've got Autohero across its 9 countries, currently at about 0.2%. Its only future projection we've seen is for next year at the point of IPO, and it's looking at about 0.5% as its projection for 2023. If we then move on to Cazoo, Cazoo is actually about twice the penetration of Autohero, but clearly only in the UK, and this is only counting the UK because it's only recently launched, or end of last year launched in France, Germany and elsewhere. As expected, UK, much quicker take up, and remember as well, we've got 2 really strong players, as we've got Cinch as well at about another 0.4%. Cazoo's projection for the UK out in 2024, which is 5 years from its launch, is about 2.7%. We think this is probably a bit aggressive. It's not impossible as a kind of place to get, but it feels quite a stretch when you compare what's happened with the States and what we know about the market and the competitive dynamics as well. However, again, it's not impossible. If we look at its projections for Europe, it's projecting to be at about 0.6% in 5 years. So 1 year after the Autohero projection, this is, again, its projection at IPO. So similar kind of projection there. So what do we think is going to happen in Europe? Well, our projections are for the whole market, so all the players. They're also to include dealers' online sales. And we think that 5 years from now, so 2 years beyond the Cazoo projections, we're going to be maybe at about 6% in the UK. It's definitely the market with the strongest kind of take-up and strongest rationale for take-up. We're a bit more optimistic than the others about Europe. We're projecting about 3.5%. Now that may sound fairly small in terms of what's happening in the market, but if you think that that's 6% of all used cars sold in the UK, that would translate to 12% of the used cars sold that are under 6 years old. And if you take cars that are actually in a fit state to sell online, i.e. no accidents of any serious nature, etc., then you're going to be a higher percentage still. So actually, it's a more aggressive, more strong forecast than it looks. So turning to how people are executing in the market, we think the biggest question out there is how can classifieds execute against these really super focused consumer propositions? And we think one of the biggest challenges for classifieds is to stand back and look at this from a consumer perspective, because the proposition isn't simply the functionality. It's not what you do on your website, although clearly what you do on your website is very important. It's about the whole creation of a brand, of an identity, of a new product category. And if we look at the marketing of Autohero or Cazoo or Cinch, we can see they're very clearly creating an identity of a very clear quality product, reconditioned in a certain way to make sure the quality is there, backed up by really strong Trustpilot ratings, etc. Typically, 4.7, 4.8s for these services. And we think it's really important that classifieds kind of stand back a bit from the question of can we deliver this functionally and think about the overall proposition. So classifieds working with dealers are always going to find it more challenging to deliver that really coherent proposition. So where do we see the real competitive advantages? We think there are 3 of these, in particular, that classifieds can play to. By bringing dealers on board, there's really the potential to get a much bigger choice of cars. And if I look at the UK, say, we've got about 6,000 cars at the moment live on Cazoo at any time. We've got about 11,000 on Cinch with its backing from BCA and the wholesale business there. But actually the largest is about 12,000, not 11, 12, about 15,000 cars on Heycar, which is, you know, a dealer-based, manufacturer-owned service. And you can see the beginning of that ramping, which has been quite rapid, from classifieds into a real stronger choice of cars. So second real advantage clearly is low-cost traffic. Again, we'd kind of put in a bit of caution here and say it's very easy to think we've got all of this traffic, but the marketing identity of the brand, the communication of what it's really about, the type of customer you want to bring in to buy a car and the point at which you want to get them in the funnel, and the type of customers you're looking for are all quite different from classifieds. And we think one of the things that classifieds need to be careful about is not to think that they already have the traffic, already the marketing. You're going to have to put a lot of investment into shaping the proposition in the right way in consumers' minds. And then the last thing is really turning the local dealer presence into a real strength, because the dealers can produce some phenomenal benefits. So just one little warning on volume. We looked at cars in Richmond, Virginia, because where the biggest CarMax is. A couple of days ago, Auto Trader in the States, if I go within 100 miles, I can get 65,000 cars. If I look at Carvana also 65,000 cars. So there are just as many cars on Carvana as there are cars on Auto Trader for people in Richmond, Virginia. Of course, Auto Trader can expand that by delivery options into the market, etc. But generally, there's a kind of sense that probably enough choice and the value of choice begins to decrease after around 50,000 cars. Nobody has a real kind of solid scientific explanation, but there's a kind of gut feel in the market that there's a certain level at which there is sufficient choice for consumers. So how are the models developing? We're seeing two different classified models developing. And I characterize them here as Auto Trader because we're dealing with Europe. Auto Trader is probably the most advanced on what I call the Classifieds Plus, which is about adding buy functionality to classifieds. And then we've got what we've called Consumer Direct. Autoscout Smile24 is the leader here. And one of them is really the Smile approach is about just-in-time buying of cars from dealers, delivering under the Smile brand and giving a very kind of wrapped, contained consumer proposition. The Auto Trader approach is much more open. The sale is under the dealer's brand. The dealer owns the car at sale, etc. So different characteristics here. Finance on Smile is only from one partner at the moment and clearly could be Smile's own finance in time. On Auto Trader are building out the capability, piloting at the moment, to put full dealer finance in so that whoever the dealer's finance choices are available, and a more sophisticated approach than that. Smile, same guarantee and warranty for all cars. Our belief is that classifieds have to define a set of standards that dealers meet and in some way at least badge those standards, etc. But I don't think Auto Trader has said anything on that at the moment in how they're approaching it. On the Smile front, Autoscout24 sorts delivery. Classifieds Plus, Auto Trader may help organize delivery, but it's down to the dealer if delivery is what's wanted, and clearly collection is also a possibility. And then finally, on the Smile front, the dealer receives a fixed fee and Smile takes the revenues from ancillary services, etc. And on the Classifieds Plus side, the dealer pays a fixed fee and Smile retains the revenues from Classifieds, etc. On the Classifieds Plus side, the revenues, including ancillary revenues, sit with the dealers. We think that many classifieds most classifieds will start at Classifieds Plus. We think there may come a point where many of them need to either transition or develop a parallel approach that is either kind of at the Smile level or is somewhere between these two different approaches. And we think that's about how you really deliver a very clear classified proposition. So looking at the value chain, what do classifieds have to do under these two different models? I'm not going to go through all of this, which we will do at the masterclass, but just pick up a few really key points. First of all, sourcing, absolutely key. All e-commerce is about sourcing vehicles. There is a huge battle on for sourcing in the market. And in order to support dealers, we believe classifieds have to produce a very solid sourcing arrangement. Clearly, dealers will have their own sourcing as well, but you need to stand up, particularly in terms of trade-ins, but more broadly in sourcing against the other kind of competing forces in the market. Preparation, clearly not needed under either scenario. No refurbishment centres like the Cazoos, etc., but QA is absolutely solid. Has to be absolutely solid, and knowing that the quality coming out of the dealers is solid. The one other thing I'd kind of pick up here is the whole point about customer services. It is an incredibly, and I'll come on in a minute, to incredibly challenging kind of customer service function versus most industries. And we believe that classifieds, even under the Classified Plus model, are likely to have to run their own customer services. And again, it's notable that Heycar, while coming from a classifieds direction, actually manages now all of the customer services and all of the customer contact for the dealers within its service. So it's already moved away from passing calls off to dealers and is now having them kind of very centrally managed. So talk a little bit about what the customer service function does, why it's so difficult, why it's so crucial. There need to be preemptive checks when a car is ordered in a dealer-friendly model. So a good call center is not just checking that the car is as described by the dealer, but they're also checking out that the consumer can afford the car, which is often not the case, and making sure before too much happens that the two sides kind of comfortably fit together. Secondly, quite often under these models of dealer-friendly e-commerce, the dealer has the option of releasing the car. It might be being sold locally already. If the dealer won't release the car, there has to be the sell-in of a different car. So you need some pretty strong sales skills within customer service. You've then got all the usual problems to resolve along the way. Finance, a big one. If a buyer fails automatic credit checking, then manual finance sourcing is needed, and a big way of losing customers is not being able to provide the appropriate finance arrangement. And then there is clearly the rejection period that is allowed by most of these services, 1 or 2 weeks, a certain number of miles driven. There's a job of persuading customers to retain cars, etc. So another kind of crucial role. And then finally, there are just some impossible things like buy a car, tell us the story of the car too big for a customer's garage. So that's a sense of the kind of operational challenges and why the call center is quite so important in all of this. Whoops, okay. So apologies there, got a slide build failure. So I'm going to pass on that one and talk on this one instead, which is, so finally, picking up, how do you sell to dealers under a dealer-friendly model? We talked to quite a lot of dealers recently about the different approaches of people already in the market with dealer-friendly models. All of them are free to list, so only pay on sale, which is helpful. And really, there are 4 key arguments that are bringing dealers in. And we're finding it's actually a pretty easy pitch to the dealer. Firstly, the main pitch is these are out-of-region incremental sales. And that's really very helpful in taking away the worry that you're substituting for the dealer's sales. Second, it's a sale at the dealer's sticker price. We have, typically a 3%, average discount on a dealer sale. So this might be 200-300 euros extra, in inverted commas, that the dealer retains. We've got the fact that the retailer assumes all liability on the sale. Typically, a warranty may be 200-300 euros for a year's warranty for a dealer, and that is taken on by the retailer as the liability. And then finally, there's clearly at the moment a strong threat from the new digital dealers, the new retailers in the market, and a very strong argument that dealers are open to, that this is a help to them to meet the challenges of scaling against the other dealers. And finally, sorry, I've got another failure of the slide. Apologies for this, the slide build. Finally, there is an argument about the overall cost savings. So actually, if you pitch a €16,000 car sale, when a dealer-friendly retailer pitches, there are 4 different elements of saving that the dealer achieves. So first of all, there's no discount on the sticker price. Secondly, they're not having to warrant the car. Thirdly, there's no commission, which is typically 3% or so to the salesperson for selling the car. And finally, there's no delivery cost. And on a typical €16,000 sale, that comes to about €1,300. Different retailers argue in different ways. The dealers tell us about the importance of these elements, but this is how they can justify the price and the retention of ancillary revenues by the retailer. Sorry about that. We will share the slides so that you can see what should have been the proper graphic on that slide and the one before. And that's it. So Autos Buzz coming up next week, but now I'm going to pause on this, hand over to Tanguy from FreeSpi for 2-3 minutes, and then we will answer questions. Tanguy.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jonathan. Let me bring some slide in there, a bit like that and like that. So, oops, sorry. Yeah, thanks for all these great insights. And since indeed I get 3 minutes, I'm gonna go very straight to the point. These slides are connected to all the discussion we're having with dozens of classifieds and marketplace. And every time, one thing struck me is what I would call the transaction or the online transaction paradox. And I would phrase it this way, is like, it's actually important or key to allow or even encourage offline conversation to increase online transaction. And let me explain that very, very quickly. If we look at a classic transactional journey, we know that it's a multiple step. And I love the way you phrased it, Jonathan, saying like it's not all about like just building technically this flow. It's also thinking about the overall consumer perspective. And we know that we're talking about like a high consideration buying process. It's a car. And so people will have tons of questions, right? And so we know that the sales conversations are going to be a key element in this process. And let me give you 3 quick examples. The first one is actually someone not ready to click on buy it now, because not used to it, because for many reasons, this person has a couple of questions before jumping into the buying process journey and might want to place a call in the first place. So it's whereas, and whether you are in a classified plus or a pure e-commerce or somewhere in between, you need to understand that, to detect it, and you need to be able to drive people back on the journey. Like a quick SMS, fantastic. We hope the conversation was meaningful. Don't forget that you get a 1 month extension guarantee if you buy online or whatever good reason to drive people back. You will have the same thing during the process itself. Like there's many steps, and I can have question connected to, I don't know, I'm in a remote place, I'm not sure about the delivery. Or it might be something connected to the payment option or exchanging my car and etc. This is where people will have questions, and a form or a chat might not be enough. They might want to have a one-to-one conversation. You again want to allow them to have this conversation, whatever it is, a WhatsApp, is it a call, any other mean. But you need to be able to know when this conversation is happening, at which stage, and you need to be able to drive people back into the flow. And the latest example is also like using this kind of tool to actually help the process itself. So it could be, for instance, using SMS tools to authorize the payments. Like, okay, you got the car delivered. I want to make sure that you're happy with it before unlocking the payment to the dealer or to the vendor at some point. So as a conclusion, we can see that yes, sales conversation are fueling this buying journey in a way. And it's very important as, and again, either the model you're choosing, Classified Plus, e-commerce, somewhere in between, it's key to make sure that you collect the right data connected to this conversation, and you can act as an orchestrator, meaning like you can drive people back online, you can orchestrate this journey to make sure that you drive more transactions. So that's it for me. And just like for Jonathan, it was a sneak peek, and I will expand during Autos Buzz on this on the Tuesday morning, if I remember well. So looking forward to see you